Hi, I am Dr. Felice Gersh, your integrative OBGYN doctor, speaking to you today from my office in Irvine, California. That's sunny Southern California. For those of you who haven't met me yet, let me introduce myself. As I mentioned, I am OBGYN. I am also board certified in integrative medicine, the new field that takes all of the efficacious therapeutic modalities to help patients to optimize their health. I've been doing a number of different types of series, and tonight I am going to talk to you about a very important topic. The label is menopause. Now, I said label because it's a name, and I think it is a very poor choice of a name, and I will tell you why. But first, you may have heard, and I'm going to paraphrase this. I believe it was attributed to Benjamin Franklin. And it was, well, there are just certain things that you can have guaranteed in life, and one is death and one is taxes. Well, he was a guy. If you're a female like me, there is something else that is guaranteed, absolute, unavoidable, and that is menopause. So what's all the fuss about menopause, and why should women even care about it? After all, isn't it kind of nice? You get to stop dealing with periods, right? Those sometimes annoying monthly episodes of bleeding. It's like, I remember when I first heard about it, it's like, what? What are you talking about? That happens to women? That seems really strange. And yeah, it does until you live it. And I have lived it for so many decades. And then what happens is you think, wow, freedom, I don't have to deal with periods anymore, until you realize what it really means. Sometimes women don't know what it means to go through menopause because nobody explains it. And that's what I'm going to do for you right now. Well, let's start with that label, the word menopause. What does it even mean? Meno is the Greek word for moon. And pause, as you can imagine, means to pause, only in this case, it's a permanent pause. It's a cessation, complete stoppage of menstrual cycles. But what does that mean to stop having the moon working with you, creating beautiful lunar-based? Yes, it's not by accident that women's menstrual cycles are classically, optimally, 28 days, the same as the lunar cycle. Because we evolved on planet Earth in this solar system of ours with our sun and our moon and our 24-hour rotation and our 12-month rotation around the sun and the moon's lunar 28-day rotation as well. And our menstrual cycles actually evolved to be one with our solar system. How amazing is that? And what's the significance of it? Well, you wouldn't know it from the word menopause. It just means it's over. Well, no more periods for you. But what does that really mean about your body, your health? Well, it turns out that the dominant hormone, I call it the master hormone of women, estrogen, in the form of estradiol, that's the ovarian-produced estrogen, is not just about reproduction, which is what it is classically thought to be. Well, estrogen is about having menstrual cycles, and progesterone, its sidekick, somehow figures in to give you menstrual cycles and helps with pregnancy. Absolutely. We would not have human beings on this planet if we didn't have those incredibly important hormones for the purpose of successful reproduction. But it goes far beyond that, because guess what? What use is it if women get pregnant in an unhealthy, dysregulated body? So nature very wisely put it all together and gave us estrogen as the master hormone of metabolic homeostasis. So what does that mean, metabolic homeostasis? It means the spark of life. Metabolism is about the creation, distribution, utilization of energy. Well, how do we get energy anyway? We get it from food. That's our energy source. So estrogen is all about regulating our appetite for food intake, and then the distribution and use of food as an energy source. It helps with the gut, with digestion. It helps with the brain and all aspects of it, our cardiovascular system. It works with every system in the body, including the musculoskeletal system. In fact, you could name any system in the body, and I can guarantee you that there are estrogen receptors present, because estrogen is like the glue that pulls all organ systems of the body together to create a functioning, healthy body. And for a female, that includes metabolic health, functioning in terms of a great brain, in terms of a great gut, a great heart, the blood vessels working right, lungs and skin, the liver, every organ working together. And not just working together, working in a perfect synchrony of time. And that revolves around our clock genes. And the master of all timing in the body that keeps the beat, the master clock in the brain, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That's a cluster of neurons that's located atop the optic nerve in the area of the brain called the hypothalamus, that has receptors from the light sensors on the retina of the eye that feeds it information about light and dark, so that we know what it is in terms of the time of the day. In addition, we now know that there are nutrient sensors in the hypothalamus, because remember, it's all about control of energy and metabolism. So there are nutrient sensors that can tell about the state of intake of food. And this all feeds into the hypothalamus, the center of the brain that then puts out signals to the pituitary gland, which then puts out its hormones, luteinizing hormone LH and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, to the ovaries to tell it how to use its hormone production capabilities to create the beautiful menstrual cycle, which of course includes ovulation, when you release the egg for fertilization, because the prime directive of life is the procreation of new life. We are the only species in, I don't want to say the universe, but certainly on planet Earth, that actually seeks to control our reproductive destiny. There's no animal that says, hey, I don't think I want to have a baby this year, it's inconvenient. You know that doesn't happen. Every other animal simply has the drive, the sex drive, and the ability, hopefully, to reproduce. In fact, most animals on this planet, when they cease being able to reproduce, they die. That's the end. There are many animals, like, how about a salmon? They go upstream, they work so hard, they spawn, and then they die. There are many species of octopus that after they lay their eggs, they die. This is the most typical for living creatures on this earth. Once they can no longer reproduce, that's the end of the road. But humans, we are a bit luckier. We women can actually live for a significant amount of time after reproductive capability ends. But we live long, but we don't necessarily live well. So nature put it together that estrogen is like the glue that puts all the parts of the body together working in beautiful synchrony. The master clock that I mentioned is actually very heavily controlled by estradiol. Estradiol keeps all the organs working on the beat, like the orchestra conductor, keeping all the instruments working at the same exact note. Can you imagine an orchestra where some of the instruments were a measure or even a note off? That wouldn't be beautiful music. That would be noise. And that's what happens in the body when you don't have proper circadian rhythm control, because you no longer have adequate estrogen produced. Every organ starts to drift as the master clock drifts off its proper beat, and you have this discordance in terms of functionality between the different organs in terms of timing. And that is really a big part of aging, is loss of this beautiful synchrony of the circadian rhythm. So we can think of menopausal women as living as though they every day They're jumping from time zones. They live a life of jet lag. Now, what happens to people who actually live that life? They work at night, they work in the day, they work in the night, they travel across time zones. They have high rates of metabolic disorder like diabetes, insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, high rates of emotional problems, depression, anxiety, lots of gut problems, a lot of reflux disorder, constipation, because their neurological system in their gut, the enteric nervous system, is linked to the central nervous system in the brain. So we have this disconnect. So we have a lot of gut dysfunction in people who are traveling across time zones. As well, they have sleep disorder, very poor quality of sleep, and they have more problems. They have immune dysfunction, so the immune system isn't working right. It also needs to be on the beat. There are clock genes in our immune cells as well. So people who are living with jet lag have higher rates of immune deficiency problems. They have more illness, they catch colds more, they get sick more, and they're more prone to autoimmune diseases, especially women who are 80% of autoimmune disease sufferers, and even cancers. That is what happens as we age. All those conditions increase. Women statistically live longer than men, but they live with more chronic disease. Women have higher rates of osteoporosis and fractures and osteoarthritis. They have more acid reflux. They have almost 3 times the incidence of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Once a woman hits about 60, 65, she is as likely to have high blood pressure as a male. She is then more likely to have a stroke than men. She's more likely to have a ruptured aneurysm, and she is equally as likely to have a heart attack. Only for females, the risk of dying from the first heart attack is substantially higher than it is in males. So that is not a pretty picture. Women after menopause have many more problems with emotions. In fact, women who are suffering from depression before they hit menopause, they are something like 12 to 16 times more likely to have a mood disorder after menopause. And what if you've never had any depression or anxiety in your whole life? You still have an increased risk of 4 times the risk after you hit menopause. So menopause is not just, oh, I don't have to deal with periods anymore. It's the beginning of metabolic dysregulation. And let me be blunt, the beginning of metabolic chaos. Now, this is dreadful, and I don't want to be negative. I want to be honest, and then I want to offer viable solutions. I cannot replace ovaries. I wish I had that capability. I think there are people working on it, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon, that we're going to have artificial ovaries that can replace the beautiful, perfectly functioning ovaries of, say, a healthy 25-year-old young woman. So you hit around 50, 51. That's the average age right now for menopause, but that's not what every woman faces. Some women go through menopause much earlier. By the way, if you have an early onset of menopause, like in the early 40s, below age 45, you statistically have a significantly increased risk for cardiovascular disease and events. This is not for wussies, this menopause thing. We need to understand what it is if we're going to deal with it effectively. I love when people put a positive spin on something. They say, going into menopause ushers in the most wonderful, mystical time of your life. Well, I want it to be a wonderful time of every woman's life, but it's not going to happen spontaneously. Women have very high rates of fractures. Over 50% of women have osteoporotic fractures. Women, as I mentioned, have high rates of cardiovascular disease. They have high rates of gut problems. The incidence of colon cancer, breast cancer dramatically increase after menopause. And I can go on and on. It's what we call inflammaging. After menopause, women have significant rates of leaky gut. That creates a problem of toxins from in the gut coming out into the body itself, where the immune system resides. These immune cells, which I mentioned, have estrogen receptors, or maybe I didn't mention that. They have clock genes. They also have estrogen receptors. After menopause, they function somewhat differently. They actually have a lower threshold to releasing their inflammatory contents. And so it takes not much. You have a leaky gut, you have endotoxins from the gut going through the lining between the cells, what we call leaky junctions or impaired gut barrier function, leaky gut. And then those toxins are affecting the immune cells that are residing in the what we call gut-associated lymphoid tissue, the GALT. That has all this lymphoid tissue, all these immune cells. 70% of all the immune system resides around the gut. These immune cells are like weapons of mass destruction, and they don't have the proper control when you don't have the right amount of estrogen. So you develop a state of inflammation, and that underlies and drives many of the problems that occur throughout the body. This chronic low-grade state of inflammation that drives neuroinflammation, dementia, mood problems, inflammation in the vascular system. You have hypertension, you're more likely to have heart attacks and strokes. You have lower energy production because mitochondria, the energy producing factories of the body, have estrogen receptors. So you have lower levels of energy production in the heart and in the brain, and women get a stiffer heart. They develop what's called mild diastolic dysfunction at very high rates, which creates the beginnings of a type of heart failure. So what can we do? Well, I can't go into it all today because we would be here all night. So I promise I'm going to give you incredible, wonderful solutions. I wouldn't leave you here high and dry. Menopause is universal. Every woman, including me, has to deal with menopause at some point. The name is wrong. We should call it what it is. Call a spade a spade. It's the aging of the ovaries, ovarian senescence. Ovarian aging is not a moment in time. You don't cross the finish line and say, I've arrived. The idea that menopause, as defined, 12 months without a natural menstrual cycle, is an artificially created definition built around menstrual periods, not around the real issues of loss of your estrogen production, ovarian aging. And with that, you don't just lose reproductive capability, you lose metabolic homeostasis. You lose the beautiful glue that keeps all the organs together working in beautiful, perfect harmony. So we need to rethink what menopause is. It's not about the end of a period for your life, although it includes that. It's about the end of ovarian production of vital hormones that aren't just involved in reproduction, but involved in maintaining the health of every organ system in your body. Because remember, nature wouldn't want unhealthy women reproducing. So it's all linked together. Creation of a healthy, beautiful, vibrant body in a beautiful, fertile young woman. But we age, we lose fertility, and we can lose vitality. But as I said, this is not grim. This is not hopeless. But if we live in this fantasy land, this world that some people have created, that is not true. That menopause is naturally the best time of a woman's life. She doesn't have to deal with having periods. So she has this freedom. She doesn't have to worry about contraception. That is true. That's probably the one silver lining if you don't want to be pregnant. You're certainly not going to be pregnant when you're in menopause because you're sterile. And that brings a host of issues. So menopause does not have to be the end of happiness and health. But without hormones, we need to rethink how we're going to live and how we're going to serve our body and its needs to help staying the vibrant, wonderful women that we have been all our reproductive lives. And we want to maintain that kind of vibrancy and energy and wonderful enthusiasm for life for the next 30, 40, 50, maybe more than that in terms of years. I want that for you. I certainly want it for me. So I'm going to come back next show and I'm going to give you viable answers to how you can deal with menopause so that, yes, we'll be honest about it, what it is, what you can and can't do, but all the things you can do so that your menopause years can actually be amazing years. So hope to see you soon. Take care, stay well, stay safe. Take care.